And I was looking at their resume, and in the last 10 years, they've probably been in 8 different companies. And I'm going, well, is that a negative thing? Like at one time, I'd looked
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that.
it's a great question to ask now.
I looked at that and I would have said, this person is a job hopper. This person, but
But
maybe
is that our boomer perspective too?
that's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering. Welcome to Culture Talks, another round of exciting conversation between my buddy Dave McCauley and me. Welcome. Good to see you, Davey.
How are you, Lauren?
Pretty darn good. Did you get your I know you're going for a shoulder operation. Did you get any data as to when you're going or?
So I meet with the surgeon on Monday to kind of go through options and then what are the real next steps. I was flying this week and my gosh, I got to pick my arm up and I had an aisle seat and every time the flight attendant came by, I was like, oh please don't hit my arm, please don't hit my arm. So I
You
was
know, it's tough, these shoulder operations. I know that a friend of mine went in and the craziest thing after he went through his shoulder operation, his right hand was 12 inches longer than his arm than his left. Okay, maybe not, maybe not. But
12 inches. Is that kind of? I don't know if that's going to make it through the cut.
you don't even have to bend down to tie your right shoe.
Lauren, this is 3 times in less than a week that I've had a chance to hang out with you. This is
I
like
know.
like awesome. It's just like in the old days when we used to work together. It's like, oh crap,
I know.
I get to
It's
see
a
Lauren
lot
again.
of
What did I do wrong? That was always. I mean, I know I'm in trouble.
good. Hey, today we're going to talk about from an organizational culture point of view. I thought we might kind of build on something I do during my Harvard classes I always ask them to go and find a couple of great companies that have got really high scores, but also to find some companies with low scores, and then to
From
read
from uh,
some
from Glassdoor.
from
Like,
Glassdoor, from Comparably. In this case, maybe we'll just kind of go to either one of them, but there are other kind of Indeed. Other people have,
yeah.
there are a lot of other kind of scoring kind of versions out there, but it's always kind of interesting to have them dig in and to see how transparent these companies are becoming. Like, I mean, literally, one of the things, the message I try to get out to everybody is look, any prospective employee or supplier or customer, they're going to go into these if they're doing any due diligence at all and find out. And now the data is getting, AI is picking the data out with a fine tooth comb and populating these platforms. And so you better be aware. So,
Yeah,
and it's
when we're
always
doing due diligence, that's one of the things that I look at is I'm going to go out on their Glassdoor and see, what the ratings are and those kind of things. And then in the process, when you meet the executive team and those things, I always ask, so have you been out on Glassdoor to see your ratings? And if there are negative ratings or whatever, I'm listening for the exec to say, well, it's just somebody with sour grapes or somebody who
exactly.
just oh, no, don't we don't sweat that. Okay, that tells me one thing both about the rating and about the individual responding to that.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of sussing out whether or not they take it seriously, whether or not they really care, just kind of where their headspace is relative to those things. So,
And I'm so glad you raised that because Dave, I think anytime you hear a leader, an executive or a board member say, oh, it's just those people pissed off at sour grapes, that is an issue. You've got, that is a red flag
yeah, yeah.
because,
It's very
you know,
self-reflective. It's very self-reflective. Well,
I mean, I get it if you've got a small little company and you got 4 reviews.
yeah.
But if you've got a company of some substance and you've got a couple thousand reviews on there, then
And
some
they're
of
all
those
saying
that
the same bloody thing.
yeah, the
There
trend they
might be a problem.
might be a problem. I just it's a little bit of a different thing, but I recently got a team together. There were 40 people there with their VP.
Okay.
And so was there all the direct reports, the directors, and then we had some other influencers there. And I said, I'd like you to go onto your device right now, and I want you to go to your favorite AI bot, whatever agentic bot, and I want you to ask the question, what is it, the prompt, what is it like to work for the VP, executive VP was sitting there?
Oh,
And I want you to do it real time at your small tables. The data that came back on that individual was stunning. Like it was, like I had done it more for myself, so I had an idea what was going to show up, but they were shocked. I mean, it was everything from this is what it's like to work for her. These are the questions she's likely to ask you in an interview.
oh,
Here are
wow.
things happen in her background that you ought to be aware of. It went on and on. There were probably, I would say, in a scrolling kind of thing, 5, 6 pages of data there on that. We're not talking about your LinkedIn profile.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
talking about an agentic review. So now imagine what you're going to get when you start using that same thing in combination with the Glassdoor scores and with other things on any kind of an institution you're going through.
That's fascinating. That's kind of, back in the day, you used to ego surf, right? You'd go put your name in Google and see what kind of results came up.
Yeah.
And I haven't done that with chat. So that's a
Well,
great idea. Just to kind of
well,
see what's out there.
just out of curiosity, ask yourself the question, give me a review of what it's like to work with Dave McCauley, blah, 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 and see what it would come up.
Yeah.
And try it on both chat and Claude and DeepSeek and see what you get. And I think you'd be surprised really around.
Oh no, I'm gonna go do it just to go, oh yeah, I am kind of that way. That
They
kind.
were pulling out data on me from, I did a lot of scoring when I was being interviewed by one of the top recruiting firms. That data from my scores is out there in the public domain. And then I got a review on my scores for at my Harvard teaching scores, and I published that. And the person from Harvard called me, literally called me and said, "Well, we don't publish these scores publicly."
How did you get this?
And I go, "Well, I just did it I just used Claude." And so it was kind of anyway where we're going. So Dave, did you have a chance to look at any companies that we thought we'd for the fun for our audience, we might pick some of the lower scoring Glassdoor scores and pick something up. And I've got a couple if you don't, but
Yeah, I don't. It's all you, but go for it.
you want me to start? Okay, so one of the I always have a view on Glassdoor that if you're below 3, you're in the weeds. Like the average Glassdoor score, I think, is about 3.2. It may be a little bit higher now, maybe 3.3. The really good companies are 4 plus and above in terms, but now the numbers are broken down into a lot more granular stuff.
Yeah,
They'll give
yeah.
you ratings on your overall culture, but they'll give you a rating on leadership, on diversity. Of course, no one talks about diversity. That's all expunged, right?
Well, we're done with
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, we're
Check
done.
that box. Check
We're
that
good
box.
now. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so one of the lower family is Family Dollar scores. And so if you did a scroll on Dollar scores, and I recognize this is the low end retail market and it's
Sure.
hard, but here are some of the things: unethical company that I would not recommend to anyone I cared for, flexible accommodations but low pay and disorganized environment, unsafe solo opening shifts, nightmare environment with constant theft and micromanagement. And it goes on and on and on. And actually, you know what? From when
What's
I
their score? What's their
2.8,
okay.
and it's actually improved. When I first started, they were 2.4. And there were things like a couple places were shut down because of rat infestation and stuff. But, I mean, when you now, so here's what's interesting, Dave. So a lot of times people give me a hard time and go, "Well, Lauren, that's the lower retail kind of thing, right?"
Sure.
But if you go to, so I say, okay, let's stop there with that, but let's go to fast food. And would you recognize that's a tough environment because you're recruiting kids, really, a lot of cases, or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
frankly, quote, secondary labor market, and you're paying $11, $12 an hour.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, tell me then how that McDonald's gets this score and In-N-Out gets one of the highest scores. In-N-Out gets a 4+ score,
Yeah.
and they make burgers with, and all of a sudden you can see the wheels going in people's mind. Well, that's curious. They're
Yeah.
still paying $11 an hour. So
Yeah.
what is the difference?
So when you start using those sorts of external things like, well, we have low pay and we have low end work and low end jobs. When you start making those sorts of external excuses so that you feel better about the score, that should give you an indication that there's still a problem. When somebody says, oh, well, that's just disgruntled employees and those kind
Yeah.
of things. When you start making those kinds of external excuses, it is simply a way of avoiding dealing with any sort of internal real issues. I had a firm that I was consulting to, and I did the Glassdoor search and I looked at all the reviews and I came back and asked the CEO, let's go through some of these. And she said, well, they're just disgruntled. And then I found out later she had members of her staff go out and start rating it high. They did
Yeah.
fake ratings and, oh, it's a 5. This person's fantastic, because most of the ratings were, the negative ratings were associated with her specifically. So they
Yeah.
called her out specifically. And so she had this mission. The goal wasn't to fix the problem. The goal was to fix the perception. And so you're
Yep.
managing perception and you're justifying to yourself rather than dealing with what might be real issues, you know?
Yeah. I think there's a difference between trying to manage the scores and being responsive. Like when I was the CPO of ATB, we had people that would monitor the Glassdoor situation,
Yeah.
and we tended to respond. We took the data a lot of times, and we would actually respond in there and saying, "We're sorry you felt like that. We're digging into this,"
Yeah.
and we try to take it very seriously. It wasn't like, "Hey, we're going to pay and buy pizzas for the next 25 people to go on there and rate us a 5." I mean, what good is that going to do? I mean, really? I mean, it is. You're
Well,
just doing
it's
PR
kinda like
pretend.
it's kinda like those rating things like Gartner and those kind of things where they rate your company in one of those quadrants. Are you in the
Yeah,
magic quadrant or whatever? And we all know, those of us who've been in the industry for a long time, most of those rating systems are pay to play. So if you
yeah,
sign
yeah,
up for their long-term license and you advocate for them and do those kind of things, you'll start to move up into the magic quadrant. And so there's that approach towards Glassdoor that potentially has the same set of, well, maybe if I give people a gift card, if they give us a good score or that kind of.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's and then defeats the whole purpose of it. And I think I think it's one data point, but the ad with it though is that I think it's going to get more and more and more transparent data. Like, I mean, it's not going to be just Glassdoor. It's going to be like, as a matter of fact, I think the Glassdoor and some of these things have a Rubicon or a rubric. I mean, excuse me, that makes it useful to kind of get, something like a 4 point, whatever that means.
Yeah.
However, when you start to use agentic AI and you start getting into really comprehensive,
Yeah.
thing, I think and you might even be able to kind of link in like perplexity or something like that that says, not only that, I want to see what's in the S1, or I want to see
Yeah.
what's
Yeah. Yeah.
in the,
Can
you
you
know,
correlate this to their financial
exactly.
missions or their what's going on in the market or versus their competitors? How are they rating relative to their competitors? Or, when you start to get creative in looking at the data and looking at how those scores happen, again, I don't, whether it's true or not, that rating is that rating. And
Right.
when you bring it to the executive team and you can learn a lot simply by understanding their reaction to it.
Yeah.
Are
I
they
completely agree.
surprised, shocked, blow it off, turn it into, well, our initiative needs to be how do we raise our score? And do we raise it honorably by actually making changes, or do we raise it, well, let's just raise it quickly and so I'll pay people to give me a good review.
Yeah. In my Harvard class, I usually have about somewhere between 20 and 30 people from around the world, and they're coming there for their organization. So as part of this exercise, I always say, what is your Glassdoor and comparably in your Indeed scores?
Yep.
And what are they? And it's shocking how many people have no
Yeah.
idea. And when they go in and start to do some digging themselves, they're going, holy cow, like this is what people are saying about us, or sometimes it's a pleasant surprise. But often, I get as disappointed with the companies that stay in the middle. Like, I mean, they've been a 3, for God knows how long, and there's no interest in getting them beyond of ever being everything more.
Yeah, as long as the goal is to just not suck, or
Yeah,
what is it from The Simpsons? The Krusty the Clown seal of approval. It's not just good; it's good enough. And so they have that sort of mentality of, it's fine, we're okay.
yeah,
Versus, how do I become best of breed, or how do I change some of these things? Or everybody's talking about this. Maybe I should look at this.
yeah.
It's just more information. You don't have to take it personally. It's just information. And
Yeah, and
so,
it's not that I would expect them to be reviewing this all the time, but I have an idea about what the various outside agencies were picking up in terms of the data
yeah,
collection around there. The other part that is missing for them when I have them do it is they're missing a picture of what a desirable future state is. In other
yeah.
words, so let me give you an example. I was dealing with a company in the pharmaceutical industry, and I won't get too much detail because I don't want to
Out
betray
anybody.
out them, but their turnover in some of their centers were in some cases 150. And I was saying, I was confronting their executive team on this. And one of the VPs got really pissed off at me and goes, "Well, you're comparing us to at that time Zoom was hot and
Yeah.
a couple of the," and I'm going, "Well, wait a minute. Let's look at let's look at Waffle House.
Yeah.
Let's look at In-N-Out Burger. Let's look at Starbucks. If you want to compare to yourself to a lower end secondary market retail market, why aren't you as good as them?" And it
Well,
was,
but the
well,
first
one
reaction though,
excuse,
that's indicative of the first reaction being taking it personally.
right?
Like, and you have to look at it as, okay, maybe they are mentioning my name. Maybe this is calling me out. Maybe I do feel like, man, we should have taken care of this or we should be dealing with this. And I haven't yet. So that's a bad reflection on me. But you got to get past that. If you take it personally, then it's about you and it's not about the organization. It's not about the people that work with you. It's not about your team. It becomes about you. And centering yourself is always it's pretty natural to start there, but you got to get past that pretty quickly.
Yeah, we do a diagnostic, and I think, Dave, you've seen it that we do in our culture
Yeah.
diagnostic. We have questions that go out and gives a score. So this is a large oil and gas company, fast growing, high profile, and we presented the results to the executive team. And the executive team was just waiting, not to say anything, waiting for the CEO to respond. And he goes, and excuse my language here, but he goes, this fucking pisses me off. This is a punch in the gut. I also think it's the most real score we've ever gotten. So at least that was, and then
See,
you
that's
open it
great though.
up.
You can work with that because you know
You
what?
can work with that.
It's open. Yes, it does feel like a punch in the gut and it pisses me off. Camille accuses me of having two emotions, anger and happy. So if I'm angry, okay, those are my idiot lights in my car, right? And okay, anger just tells me, oh, it's probably close to home. And so I need to kind of deal with it. And for him to go that fast from, yes, take it personally because it is personal and move into, is it true? Is it real? And can we start working through that?
Yeah, and one of the things, and just because I want to come to retention as a metric here in a bit, but the thing that I'm curious about, Dave, is that the amount of organizations that are happy to be vanilla. Like we've been we were talking about this a little bit around that. It's, well, we don't suck, but we're not great, and we're,
Yeah.
really, you
Yeah.
want to be. Do you want to you want to play in a franchise that is never going to make the playoffs, or you're never going to
Can you see the job request? Are you average? Are you happy being just does
come join us to be average?
yes, does meh line up with your personal values? Meh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and so one of the organizations as a client of ours, I haven't been with him for 2 years, and I was looking to see whether there was any progress. And I actually hadn't been drinking, but it was later in the evening. And I sent the couple of executives I have a personal relationship with. I'm going, is that, guys, I can't help but poke at you, but you haven't gotten any better. And and I take it personally too. Like I was working with them around advancing their culture, and like we don't want to build dependency over long periods of time. But I think what I realize is that when we kind of concluded our relationship with them, we left them too much on their own to not nudge,
Yeah.
push. I mean, I don't. You want to be careful because they're the ones that need to take. So I take responsibility around. I'm looking at my own process and going, what's missing here that that we conclude a kind of, we don't have this fully kind of in your face relationship, and things just putter out
Yes.
and you don't make any progress. And I'm going, that's I'm not happy with that. But you know what? The people that can't be happy with it are those people.
Yeah. I don't understand that sense because there's the old adage, if you're standing still, you're falling behind. And culturally, organizationally, recruiting and retention wise, if you're not improving, you're falling behind. You're
Yeah.
you're accepting average and you're not challenging your people. You're not calling them to a higher calling or fulfilling more or doing or feeling more successful. There's no incentive or there's no motivation. There's no moving forward. I don't feel like I'm progressing. And sometimes, I like my paycheck and it comes and it goes in the box and it goes in the bank and I work my 9 to 5 and some folks enjoy that. But I don't think organizationally that's going to attract additional talent if your goal is to continue to improve. I mean, if you're happy where you are, then you will quickly fade away.
And I often say that to people. Look at it. You know what? It is part of that old adage, but don't think you can be unintentional and somehow it's just going. You're likely to slip behind. You're likely to go backwards. And
Yeah, and there's probably stuff going on. If you're not paying attention to it, there's probably stuff going on that you wouldn't like. There's
Yeah.
probably behaviors that are happening that, well, that doesn't line up with who we say we are, and you're missing something. If you're not conscious about it, you have a company culture, whether you like it or not, and
Exactly. You do. You
it,
do.
it's people know how to get things done. I knew that if I wanted to get some deals to go out faster from a shipping perspective when we were doing manufacturing, if I bought the team beers and pizza after their shift, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, whatever time they finished, magically I could get my deals, my stuff to go out faster. Magically. But that was the culture. And
Yeah.
so, it was, you
Yeah.
know, Dave's going to buy us beer, so let's get his orders out first,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it lifted up this getting ready for this podcast with you lifted up maybe stopping my tracks a little bit because I've always been a leader that have asked other leaders to pay attention to retention. And because, you make this investment in people and you want them to contribute for some material period of time where they can be all in, right? You're investing in them, right?
Yes.
And they're investing in you. It's a mutual relationship. And I was starting to look at some of the companies that have the lowest retention rates. And the list reads like you're right in the standing in the middle of Silicon Valley. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and going like, well, how does like the average tenure at Meta, according to data that I saw, this is 2025 data, so it's a year old, was 1.8 years. And I'm going, isn't that curious? And you asked me a question when we were preparing for this podcast to start. Does it matter anymore?
Yeah.
Does it matter anymore? Is that actually a strategy? And I'm
Is it
beginning
their
to
business
wonder.
strategy? When I started working at, or this is before you started, but when I was there, published a catalog that went out and it had the
Yeah.
wrong 800 number on it. Now it did. We, as you know, we would send out millions of catalogs, and I would
Yeah.
staff the team to make sure we were answering 20, 30,000 calls a day or whatever.
Yeah.
And the number rang at an old family used car dealership in Ohio. And they had this 72, 73-year-old woman who now all of a sudden her phone is ringing off the hook. She's getting thousands of calls a day. She wrote down every person's name and number, every person's information, and was faxing it to me every day.
Oh my
So she was
goodness.
such a dear. I bought her gifts every year after that. I would buy her Mother's Day gifts but I took it to our marketing team and said, "Hey guys, we put the wrong 800 number on this catalog." And the marketing leader at the time said, "Oh, we have a process for that." And so because it happened so often, is right when I first started at Zones, when they had a process because it happened so frequently. They had built a reliable method for dealing with when, not how do we stop publishing the wrong 800, but what happens when we do. And that sounds to me like this whole retention thing, or we have people who are with us 1.8 years is their average tenure. That now becomes part of the business model, not how do we stop this, or is this a good idea to stop? So they're working it into. I'd imagine if this is part of your business model, they work it into their business plan, their recruiting strategy, their budgeting process. Okay, we get them for 1.8 years. And so here's how we budget. Here's what we're looking for. Here's how we allocate our recruiting resources. And if you have a process built around a retention rate of, 150% turnover, or 1.8 years, we're going to get out of this person, that changes how you manage and lead and how you build the organization and how you
Yeah.
not dealing with the issue, you're dealing with, okay, this is what's happening. So how do we deal with the what's happening rather than
So,
the process to stop it?
yeah. So let me play the
Long story to kind of get to the point that you built a process around what's happening rather than dealing with stopping what's happening.
let me build the cynical side of this thing a little bit around
You go, girl.
it. If that is the case, that my business model doesn't depend on having any kind of
Longevity
truly
or
longevity, and if it's really just I need to have a transactional high-end body, like I mean, in Meta's case, I'm assuming these are developers or people that are working on the
yeah,
platform or whatever part of the business it's in. This is a macro number I was looking at, the 1.8 years. And it wasn't just them. I don't want to single out Meta. If you go down the list, it's like a who's who of
yeah,
like Amazon's in there, other people are in there. And the top 10 lowest, I think it went up to like 2.1 years. It was like a low number. Like I'm
wow,
going, well, if that's the case, then the business model must be robust enough that you don't depend on it. So why won't you invest on just churning people out more as opposed to investing in your culture and developing your
Your
the
leaders
team.
and your management and all those.
Yeah,
So,
like
so
why does it matter?
Lauren, do you think that because it's probably widely known in those spaces, do you think that when they're recruiting and somebody says, "Yeah, I want to sign up for this," in their heads they're saying, "I can deal with any crap for a year and a half and have on my resume meta developer program and make a little bit of money and or get a small, stock options or whatever. I can do that for 2 years. I can deal with anything for 2 years." And then at the end of 2 years, then I can go do what I want to do and go do work in a place that makes me
It's
happy.
a very
You think it
it's a very
attracts those people?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because I was looking at a resume of someone that sent me this resume of this person, and this person couldn't been more than 40 years old, MBA and a law degree. And I was looking at their resume, and in the last 10 years, they've probably been in 8 different companies. And I'm going, well, is that a negative thing? Like at one time, I'd looked
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that.
it's a great question to ask now.
I looked at that and I would have said, this person is a job hopper. This person, but
But
maybe
is that our boomer perspective too?
that's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering. So but it raises like it just, like now on the flip side, some of the banks, I think I don't want to, I want to be careful that I say this, but one of the top banks, and I guess you'd expect this, and I haven't worked for financial institution, their average tenure is about close to 10 years. Now, in a financial institution, frankly, there's a lot more money available typically, and there are a lot more variation in the kind of roles and jobs that you can take, Dave. So, maybe I don't know. It just really kind of has kind of stopped me in my tracks for a minute and
Yeah.
go, maybe I have to re-examine my thinking about, is that the wrong question? Retention, is it what you do when you're retained? That's the high order question all the time, but I just don't. It was always a bellwether number for me. I'm wondering now.
Yeah, and instead of it being a results indicator, maybe it's a process indicator or a leading indicator that there may or may not be an issue, and it may or may not be the right thing. I'll interview folks for the company that I'm working at here in Vegas, and I'll talk to them about but I don't hear from them. I'm not looking for a place beyond 2 years. I just don't hear that. I'm looking for a place where I can grow and be challenged, and I'm looking for a place where I can count on, being paid and being treated with respect and those kind of things. They're not looking for, I only want to do this for 2 years, make a ton of money, and then be gone. But
Yeah.
that may just be who I'm talking to and who we're meeting with. So, but it is a good thing to ask the question: is that something that I need to be concerned about, or just something that I ask questions about?
Here's where it breaks.
What's important to my business, right? Because if my business depends on long-term relationships with customers, long-term relationships with the organizations that we work with and those kind of things, then I do need people who are going to be here for a long time.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
that's the case, then maybe I don't need it.
yeah,
I do
yeah.
have one more question about retention, though, Lauren.
I want to
When you
come
look
back
at
to it. I'll do it. Go.
when you look at this and you say retention, there's regretted retention, right? So people who we wanted to stay left, and then there's unregretted retention where it's okay, I'm glad this person resigned, right? So it's kind of like we were going to deal with them from a performance perspective. So when you're looking at retention for like 1.8 years or those things, do you look at those two types of retention differently, or
Yeah,
oh, okay,
I do for different reasons because I think I find sometimes leaders use unregretted retention as an excuse for their own lousy behavior.
okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
Like so when I go, hey, when you're telling me you've got unregretted retention, what you're saying is you had failure at your recruitment, your selection, your development level.
Okay, so it's a
That's what
leading
you're telling me.
indicator for something else. Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
don't tell
Right.
me that you should feel good about that. We got
Got it.
rid of all those useless people
Yeah.
that we spent, you know, we wasted their time and they wasted that's a failure on our part.
Okay.
It's not like goody, we got rid of, so and so. And I find there's too much on that. The other part though, Dave, this is where this kind of breaks down and why I go back to maybe retention. If let's say you and I are interviewing a leader, right? And we're looking at this leader's results performance.
Okay.
And in the last 5 years, the average tenure of anybody staying and working for this leader has been 4.5 to 5 months.
Ooh, sorry.
So this is a true story. This is a true story. So to me, I'd go, what the hell's going on here? where no one wants to work for you with you for longer. Now, the response I'm gonna get, I'm a development shop
Yeah.
and people take on this crappy role here for 5 months and then they move on. And that's a little bit of sometimes the spin.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing a good thing. They come here as a baseline kind of thing. But oftentimes it's an indication around we're using human beings as a way to put up with lousy, crummy jobs. And
Yep.
we put a leader in there and we go, we really honor this leader because he or she's really good at keeping people in crappy jobs for periods of time. And there's a breakdown there.
Okay.
I don't want a leader. I don't want a leader that the first thing people do after being with them for 2 months is figuring out how the hell they're going to get out of there.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. That's good. That's
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So so let's give our pizza ratings to companies that, let's say that we wanted to give them a 4 out of 5 for the way they deal with retention. What would be a company that we would say this is the criteria for the positive way you manage criteria? You get a 4 rating if you do these things. What are some of the principles?
So one, you actually are tracking your retention and your performance. You're getting reviews and input based on your individual managers and your individual leaders. So you're at least doing those things.
Yeah.
Two, you take seriously when you do get those reviews, you actually take them seriously and you bring them to the executive leadership team, and there's an action plan and actual strategic deliverables associated with those two things. And
Yeah.
then, I don't know, what else would you look at?
Well, Dave, for me, it would be any time that I think that you're using human transaction and accepting the rapid displacement of those humans, I think it's an indication that you've got a major process problem.
Well, yeah, you're a one.
Yeah. So that's the thin crust, right? Because, right, like that's the New York thin crust. Because, like, let me give you an example. In banking, when I first started, one of the things that people hated the most was opening up bank accounts because they would take 3 hours and you would sit with a customer for 3 hours.
Yes.
So people in that role wanted to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. But often the strategy was not to fix that process. It was to go to HR and find more stupid people that wanted to go do that for a longer period of time.
Yeah. Don't
And
solve the
the
root problem, solve
Yeah.
the reality.
And
Yeah.
the other thing, so that the thin crust to me is that let's not have these kind of jobs. Let's have roles where people can flourish and we want human beings in there because they make a difference in there, which then leads you to believe that if they're continuing to grow and develop in there, that they make us better as opposed to let's figure out the business model where we can get human beings to transact out of there. Like one of the classic examples are unsafe jobs. Like, we used to laugh in the construction industry, and when I first started in business, is roofers. Well, I mean, I'm being horribly cynical because roofing is a very dangerous and difficult
Oh
job.
yeah.
But what if you worked for an organization and made it safe for you to be on a roof? I mean, it's still hot and
Oh, it's still
blah, blah,
difficult.
blah.
You're hot. You got to haul those shingles up the ladder.
But at least you're not going, well, let's just replace those guys because when they fall off, I know I'm going to get a poor OSHA score. So, but it will just ask the agency to find more of these people. Anyway, you get my drift.
Yeah.
So you can't get a good pizza score on this one until you really are committed to not just having transactional roles. And therefore, if you're not, and so I think you have to be very suspect if you've got people in roles for 1.8 years. Like, I
Oh
think
yeah.
you have to,
You at
I
least
think
have to ask the question.
you have to ask the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
And like
reasonable.
the good cheese on this thing is that somehow you're able to marry and connect the retention with the contribution. That is a harder thing to do. In other words, if the organization is truly a learning organization, then you might want to work from the premise that the longer that someone is contributing in that role, the higher value that they're producing.
Yeah, that's more
But
than the cheese, man. That's the sauce. That's the
yeah,
sauce right there.
that's the sauce. Like, look at Dave. You run lots of sales organizations. Like to become a really, really good commercial account manager. Like, you have to have a set of attributes, but you do learn over a period of time
Yes.
how to get better at that, right?
Yes, and you also reward those folks, the ones who are really, really good, and they help you with retention and your growth inside those customers. Then they typically will make more money and more
Yeah.
reliable money. So you increase their base as well as giving them variable comp. So
Yeah.
it's
And, and then I guess the sauce and cherry on the tomatoes on the top for me around a good score is
as long as
that
there's no pineapple on this pizza, I'm
no pineapple. No, you never. You're in New York or pineapple. But the is that you don't start to use the term regrettable and unregrettable loosely as excuses for your behavior, right? You don't go, well, because I think it's a cop out. It's like I think without repeating myself too much, but it's a cop out. So
I,
anyway,
I
that's
think I think that's exactly right. I think that's probably the best way to end it is if you are taking that external input as, oh, it's just the reason is because of these macroeconomic issues or they're just people with an axe to grind or there's this. Once you start hearing yourself make those excuses, maybe you're one or two slices. Maybe instead of being the three or four slices that you think you are, maybe you're one or two slices. When you start using those external things as excuses, then maybe that's a leading indicator that you might have a problem.
And I think the other thing that maybe on the flip side of it from an employee point of view is that if Gen Z or whatever alphabet we're on, if they're going, my way ahead is to leave as many times as possible,
Yeah.
I think it changes the strategy because like if people came to the bank, I don't want them doing the same job,
Yeah.
but I'd love them to be able to go, I've been in risk management and now I'd like to go on to retail banking because now I'm going to take the risk management stuff that I learned and I'm going to apply it into
Yeah.
I then you're supplementing your resume and your experience and your LinkedIn profile in a way that's making a contribution to yourself and to the institution. But if I say I'm going to be here in risk management for 2 years at ATB, and then I'm going to go to Wells Fargo, and I'm going to, and I'm going to then go to Bank of America or whatever, or Goldman or whatever, you're just causing this hopping kind of mentality
Yeah.
to build your resume.
There's a lot of stuff on Reddit or sometimes you'll see it on LinkedIn where folks will talk about how they've increased their salaries and the way in which they increased their salaries was to move to the next company rather than
Yeah,
being valued for what they've learned and done in the previous company. And so that's also a good indication for folks that maybe you need to look at how you're compensating people when they reach certain plateaus or certain behavioral things or even tenure markers. There should be some sort of approach to how do I make sure I keep this person rather than them thinking the only way I can get a raise is if I go to another company and then come back, that
yeah.
kind of thing.
And I say sometimes be careful for what you wish because a couple years ago, somebody I care about deeply was running development companies for technology company A
Yeah. Yeah.
and paying about $250,000 a year, pretty substantial amount of money, even today's standards.
Yeah.
And company B at Silicon Valley was offering about $400,000 to that same role. So a lot of people are going into Starbucks or whatever and getting recruited out and going over here. Interesting thing about those guys that went from there to there, they don't have any jobs. So you've got to be careful. Like if you're getting lit up, like right now, if you're getting lit up for AI
Yeah.
because you're going to do something and someone's offering you an unreasonable amount of money, be going with your eyes wide open because I can guarantee you what they're thinking about from a business model point of view. They're not thinking about how they can add to that cost.
Oh yeah. 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 Exactly.
You're going to lose your job if you're not careful. And so you
It'll
might get
happen.
that high paying job for a very short period of time, but then you know what? You might be lining up at the community college deciding what kind of mechanics you're going to take. Anyway, and that's not too far from the truth.
No,
I
no,
mean,
that's very close to the truth. Yeah.
I know, believe it or not, I know I'm not being judgmental and I'm just telling you how dramatic it is. I know 4 or 5 people that spent 25 plus years at Microsoft that are now into programs at community colleges to do occupational activity. They can't get a development job. They cannot do it. 25 years working high end, sophisticated
At
stuff.
a very forward-looking and solid company like Microsoft.
Yeah, and frankly,
Well
they're at
respected.
Bellevue Community College, they're into nursing or I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's after 25 years, you're 50 years old, and now you're going, you're having to learning a different craft
Yeah. I bet you're
because
thinking, "I should have saved my money." But
and, maybe they did and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, hey, Dave, the last thing when we now go into our leadership side is we're going to do a quick thing on leaders that where there's a value contribution. Maybe we'll do just a quick run on this, right?
Sure.
But this people that, examples where people, you are what you do more than you say, right?
Yeah.
You are what you do. And so I'm going to tell one little story because this kind of makes people kind of stop in their tracks. So one company I worked for back in the early 90s, the chairman would send out almost on a regular basis, at least once or twice a year, the Staples pencil
Yeah.
saving email, right?
Yeah.
Cutting costs, we're saving kind of stuff, right? So, and that would always be endorsed by the executive team. And so I happened to work for that chairman at this time. And this is a true story. So right after the email went out, and we got on our corporate jets to go for a company wide retreat. And well, there's some question around, is that cost saving itself? But okay, the argument is, we got these jets and we're paying for them, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
use them, and we go from city A to city B to, I'm going to have a strategic retreat. So one of the executives had a special set of golf clubs made because we always golfed. It was a very much a golfing culture, right? And when we landed, he forgot his custom made golf clubs. So he sent the jet back deadheaded
To get his
to get his
clubs.
club. Yeah, to get his club. So my argument,
You know how many staples that is?
a lot of state.
It's a lot of staples.
But my question I always ask people is, who do you think knew about that story?
Lord, everybody knew about it.
Everybody. Dave, I'll bet you within a week, 50,000 people knew that story. So I use that story to say, if you knew this guy, you'd actually like him. Like he was a nice guy.
Probably very affable, probably, but didn't give it a second thought.
No. And you get to the point where sometime, particularly in these very large companies where you've got, big salaries and a lot of people, that are in fealty to you. And you start to think about these perks as like just,
Oh, it becomes entitled.
doesn't everybody have a limousine? You know what I mean? And so, but it just to me underscores that when you declare something, like if you're going to be self-accountable as a value,
Yes.
then the first person to look in the mirror is yourself about living that way, not to hold judgment on everybody else. And that's the only way these values they have an endorsing set of credibility at all in these organizations, I think.
Yeah, I always, when you think about company values and you read those statements on the wall or you got the posters out there, and I always think, I wonder how true these things really are in
Yeah.
day-to-day behavior. So what I like to work on is what do the values look like in action? Rather than just the values, but like what are the actions we expect to see in like we talked about one the other day, an initiative beyond expectation. That's a value in action, right? So we want you to take initiative, but it has to be beyond expectation. And so I can show you what that looks like, right? But if you
Right.
just have like integrity, but somebody's like, nobody's going to notice if I take these pens and papers home and use this for my kids because they got some project at school. Nobody's going to notice. I'll just take that. But then how is that being acting out of integrity, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you draw the line there, I always think about optimizing for self-respect. Like I want to feel like I had a good interaction and I aligned with the values. I don't want to later go back and say, man, I wish I'd never said that. I wish I hadn't done that. If you start thinking about it through the lens of, am I going to feel good about myself when I have to look at myself in the mirror, right? Like you always say, the person in the mirror, right? So if I'm optimizing for self-respect, then I can look myself in the mirror and I can say,
Yeah.
okay, I followed those agreed upon values. But a lot of times they're just things up on the wall that nobody takes a look at.
Yeah.
And organizationally, you have to purposefully say, here's this person, and we're going to recognize them in front of the organization to say, thank you for expressing value X. Thank you for living
Yeah.
value X. Thank you for bringing that to your day-to-day work, whether it's an internal person or an external customer. You always bring this level of character to how you interact, and you
Yeah.
have to drive that home.
And I think when top leaders, because not only are they in the mirror, but they also live in a goldfish bowl, like people are watching them very carefully, right?
Yes.
So I think like, okay, we're human beings and we need to be authentic, and not every day is going to be our best day. The end with it though is that if you see yourself as a constant student and an example of that particular value, if you deeply believe in it, now, one of the ones I feel strongly about is self-accountability. Like if you ask people to raise their hands if they think they're self-accountable, then most people will put their until they are become self-observant of their own behavior,
Yeah.
right? Like we used to talk about that. Like people, you literally could. It's so weird, Dave, right? Because you could literally have a conversation around self-accountability, and the next conversation, when you say what went wrong with this project, someone is going, "Well, it's production's fault."
Well, it's Lauren's fault.
Yeah, it's
You
exactly.
said to me once, and I think it's like 30 years ago, you said this to me. We were talking about somebody at a job that we were working at together, and I won't say who because you'll know right away. But we were talking about this person, and what you said was, do their feet line up with their mouth? And I have said that like I hear I'm channeling, WWLD. What would Lauren do, right? So I'm looking for something to say. That just comes out. I've said that more time, but do their feet line up with their mouth? And that's inherently, people are watching. Do your feet line up with your mouth?
You know, I have this deep commitment to respect, and I have found myself a couple times because I'm not a public figure, but in Alberta or places in the airport, people would know me, but I would know that they knew me, and
The
I,
price of fame, Lauren, the price of fame.
yeah, I wish it were, but it just because, anyway, I happened to be run into a guy at WestJet the other day. He goes, "Lauren, you wouldn't remember me, but I worked with you at the bank, and I'm now working for WestJet." I wouldn't have recognized this person, right? I would, right? I mean, I'm not no disrespect. I mean, just but my behavior at the airport, a couple of times I've gone on a plane and gone, "Oh my God, the way I treated that, like I am not at my best today on respect." Like, I mean, I was just an asshole. And speaking to tie into the last podcast,
Yeah.
and I'm going, and you've got to be this constant student around self-aware of your own behavior around
Yeah.
these things. I think that's the message around not perfection, but I think the message is for leaders. If you're going to adopt and you really care about these values, then you are as self-aware as you can be, and you're trying to tell stories and live that way more often than you're not, so that people can go,
Yeah.
that guy's not perfect, but more often than not, that's what she or he's
Yeah.
like,
And
right?
that's the self-reflective part of optimizing for self-respect. Because
Yeah.
if I believe in these values, then I need to look at whether or not my behavior lined up with those values.
And
And
I think a lot of times those values end up when you think no one's looking,
oh,
but they're
they're
always
always
looking.
looking.
They're always looking.
Yeah.
And I know, and I go, and that's why I'm going like, why don't, so I'm not having a good day. So why behave like that? I mean, that's not like I say, none of us are gonna be perfect,
Yeah. I've been meaning to tell you, Lauren. I've been meaning to bring this up.
but anyway, maybe that's a good way to end because I do think the values are important. I think the storytelling's important, the conversation's important. I think the learning's important, the self-learning's important. So, my ask on our audience is that don't spend all your time trying to find everybody else as to whether they're doing it or not. Do it yourself.
Yeah. Just,
And that'll make a big
yeah.
contribution.
Set the example. Yeah.
Set the example. And, as best as you can in
Yeah.
our imperfect days. Hey, man, I'm loving doing these podcasts with you, Dave. I
And
really
I got to see you 3 times in a week. This is
I know,
awesome.
and we're putting them in the can, and we'll do a couple more, and hopefully, as we build our audience out, they'll come to appreciate that. Man, that they're going to start sending us all kinds of like gifts, Dave, for all the wisdom they're getting. Like,
I want questions. I want questions. But
yeah, let's get
what
questions.
are you supposed to say at the end of these? Like and share. Like and share. So
Yeah, like and share. Yeah, oh, yeah, I guess you do like and share.
yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, good luck at the dock.
Thank you, sir.
I'll
I'll
tell
update you when I get the course of action. So
if you give me the name of the surgeon, I'll tell him to keep that right arm shorter than the other left arm.
awesome. All
All
right.
right. Take care.
Love you,
Bye
brother.
for now, Dave. Take
Thanks,
care. Bye.
Garrett.
Bye. Thanks.